Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, are the Western Conference Finals over after another Spurs blowout? Plus, we react to strong comments from Mark Cuban on Donald Sterling. And is Tony Romo the 12th best quarterback in the NFL? The First Take podcast starts right now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Take. Curie champion Skip Bayless in studio. Stephen A. Smith, our partner in San Antonio. Good morning, Stephen A.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Boy,
Good.
You're looking good today, like you got plenty of sleep last night.
Oh my.
I got a lot. I got enough sleep.
That's what I heard.
I worked until 1 in the morning. I worked until 1 in the morning. What you want me to do?
Hey, silly me, I couldn't go to sleep because I was too keyed up from that game last night.
It was a great game. You look refreshed and ready to go. Both of you do. So let's get it started. Coming up on the show today, Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban is known for his bold statements. Well, that was the case when he spoke about Donald Sterling and bigotry. We share what he said and get reaction. Plus, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook get into a bit of a shouting match during Game 2, a small one. Is that relationship starting to fracture, or was it just playoff frustration?
Wow, good question.
Yes, we'll get to that. However, before we do, let's talk about the game in general. Skip Spurs, shall we? Let's address the dominant display put on by the Spurs. They beat the Thunder 112-77. The Thunder could not slow down the Spurs offense or even compete with it for that matter. Parker had 22 points. Danny Green made 7 3-pointers, while Timmy and Manu combined for 25 points. The dynamic duo of Westbrook and Durant only had 30 points combined, and those other 3 starters, 4 points. Listen to what Tony Parker had to say.
After the game, nobody's very happy in our locker room. You know, everybody's very focused, and we respect that team. And we know that they're very capable to come back, and they did that against us in 2012. So we're just very focused.
They're staying focused, Stephen A. They remember what happened in 2012. But let me ask you this. Do you think the series is over?
I mean, no disrespect to Kevin Durant, the great Kevin Durant, nor Russell Westbrook, nor Scott Brooks in this first-class organization, but it's over. There's no other way to look at it. The fact of the matter is, when you look at what has transpired with this team, the absence of Serge Ibaka has really been a devastating blow to them because they have no one on the interior worth noting. I think you start Steven Adams, you get him in this game, whether it be at the expense of Nick Collison or somebody else, probably Nick Collison. You start him with Kendrick Perkins, you roll the dice, and you simply go from there. But there's really nothing else that you can do. The San Antonio Spurs are a well-oiled machine. They move the basketball very fluidly. They have an elite superstar point guard in Tony Parker. Manu Ginobili is back, playing, as far as I'm concerned, better than I've seen him play in years. When you look at all of that and then the size that they have, and you find yourself in different scenarios and situations with a Kevin Durant on a Tim Duncan, and you just look at it and you just say, what can you do? And they had 40 points in the paint. They forced Oklahoma City into 2 of 20 shooting from 3-point range. Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, at one point, it was like 18 game time minutes where they were the only individuals who scored the point. You've got the combination of Kendrick Perkins, Thabo Sefolosha, along with Nick Collison, 3 guys in the starting lineup that have scored a combined 9 points total in the first 2 games of this series. Thabo Sefolosha is your starting shooting guard, and inexplicably, this man has not scored a point in either game. He has registered not 1 but 2 donuts in the Western Conference Finals. I don't know how much more anemic you can get. I don't think it's possible to get more anemic than that. And so when you think about all of those things, what it comes down to is that without Serge Ibaka as your eraser, it not only compromised the Oklahoma City Thunder defensively because they have nothing to offer on the interior defensively, but also it compromises them offensively because clearly Serge Ibaka had the ability to spread the floor and to make defenders come away from the basket because he could hit that 15 to 17 foot jump shot. He's one of the better shooting power forwards in the game. Without him, Tim Duncan and Thiago Splitter just get to stand in the low post, put both of their hands up. They don't even have to jump. And as a result of it, Oklahoma City's not getting to the free throw line the way that they customarily do, and they've turned into nothing but a perimeter shooting team, and they have absolutely no answer for the San Antonio Spurs. I have too much respect for Durant and Westbrook to say they'll get swept. I'm thinking they'll give you one, just like AI gave you one in 2001 against the Lakers. But outside of that, this series is over. It's no way that Oklahoma City is coming back as far as I'm concerned. San Antonio is heading back to the NBA Finals.
So you are revising your pre-series prediction to Spurs in 5?
From 6 to 5, yes.
Okay, I'm going to answer Carrie's initial question to start my answer. No, this is not over. No, 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 no. Am I going to fall into the trap that you are now sitting for me? Because Stephen A. Smith, I'm going to say it again. The Oklahoma City Thunder have 2 of the top 5 players in the National Basketball Association, and one of them, if memory serves, was just named MVP. Am I right about that?
Yeah, he won.
Was
Kevin
that
Durant.
last year?
No,
it was this year.
Currently.
Kevin Durant is now the reigning MVP. And Stephen A. Smith, they are going home to the loudest arena in the National Basketball Association for not just 1, but 2 games, 3 and 4. And you've been covering the NBA almost as long as I have. What is the oldest playoff bromide? The series doesn't start until the road team wins a game. Has the road team? No. So the series to me has not started. And I'm going to stand by my pre-series prediction that the Spurs will win in 7 games because I have way too much respect for Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. And I'm going to ask you a question here. Do you think in Game 3 I can again count on Danny Green hitting 7 out of 10 three-point shots? I don't think I can count on that. Can I count on Durant and Westbrook going, a combined 1 for 9 from 3? And the Thunder, as you point out, going 2 for 20 in Game 3 from 3? I don't think I can count on that. I'm sorry. I won't count on that. You mentioned the free throws. Do you think that a Kevin Durant, who led the NBA in free throws attempted by 170, 170. He attempted more free throws than anybody else. Blake Griffin was second in the league. Can I count on the fact that in Game 3 he will attempt only 5 free throws and they'll all be in the first quarter as they were last night? Because in quarters 2, 3, and 4 last night, the Oklahoma City Thunder attempted a total of 3 free throws, none by Russell Westbrook, who took 0 for the game, and none in the last 3 quarters by Kevin Durant. Am I going to count? No, I'm not going to count on that. You mentioned Cephalosha. Do you remember what happened in Game 3 in 2012, the turnaround game in that series after San Antonio won Games 1 and 2? Cephalosha went for 19 and 6 steals in Game 3 that turned it around at home. How many times in your career and mine have we seen a team get shamed on the road in Games 1 and 2, and then shockingly, almost inexplicably and wildly flip the script in Games 3 and 4? And all of a sudden we're saying, oh my God, we actually have a series now. And I got to tell you, Oklahoma City did have some success in both those first 2 games. I'll remind you, Game 1, Oklahoma City led until 4 minutes were left in the third quarter. Last night, Oklahoma City won the first quarter and looked impressive doing it by 2 points, 24-22. And I'm thinking, wow, they're playing harder than the Spurs. Danny Green happened, the guy who's spent the most time in Coach Pop's doghouse. And by the way, thank you, Danny, for what you did for me last night, saving the night for me, because we had him on the show, remember, in New Orleans at the All-Star Weekend on Friday. He's a terrific interview. I think he's the best interview in the Spurs locker room. Yet he has taken more abuse from that coach than any of those players have, and he stood tall last night and made shots. But we saw what happened in the finals last year in Games 6 and 7 when he went 2 for 11 after setting the record. So am I going to bank on Danny Green saving another night and another night? I hope the Spurs can steal one of these games and go home 3-1. I hope so. But I, for one, am not banking on it because the Thunder know deep down they did reverse it 2 years ago.
Yep.
They did win 4 in a row, albeit with Ibaka, who made 11 out of 11 shots in Game 4, and with James Harden, who shot lots of daggers in that series, including the dagger late in Game 5. But me, nope, not falling into that
You're not
trap.
doing it.
Sorry, I'm not taking the bait.
Neither is Tony Parker, as just mentioned.
Nope, and they shouldn't. It's too dangerous.
Look, man, you're emotional about your Spurs. And what you want to do is you don't want to sit there and say, look, stop being so sensitive. Let me hear my point first. The point that I'm trying to make to you is this. You don't want to get caught up in the trap where you're looking at OKC and you're saying, we've got them because you saw what happened to you a couple of years ago when San Antonio was up 2-0 and OKC exploded. I get where you're coming from. But, Skip, I'm going to have to tell you, they just look completely outclassed. And it's like, and it's not because San Antonio is simply just more efficient than them, because Oklahoma City usually has the talent to overcome that. But that's when you have options. And what I'm trying to tell you is Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook are not enough to beat this team. This San Antonio Spurs team, like I keep telling you, they're on a different kind of mission, man. Tony Parker, I was so glad that he came out and he said what he said, Skip, because that's their attitude. They literally, I'm in the tunnel, Skip. They're walking off the court. It's like it's all business. Doesn't matter. Their mission is Miami in the NBA Finals.
Game 6.
They are coming to get what they believe rightfully belongs to them.
Thank you.
And I can't emphasize this enough. When you are a team and you are that elite and you feel like somebody else has something that belongs to you, there's a different dimension to your game, to your focus, to your approach, to everything. Danny Green is handling the ball better. He's hit, 15 of his last 21 three-point shots? That's true. But Skip, he's actually handling the ball better. Occasionally, he's pushing the ball up the court, okay? He's not waiting to be open. He's taking contested shots. This is the level of confidence that he's showing wasn't there last year. I'm looking at Tony Parker. Yeah, he drives you crazy with dribble,
Not
keep
last
dribbling
night,
the ball.
he didn't.
Skip, you know what
He attacked all night long last night.
I know that. But I'm getting to a point here. Skip, you know what he does? He's out there dribbling, right? Do you know why it seems like he's dribbling so much? Because he's literally like, they can't stop this play. I'm going to ram it down your throat all day long. Because, Pop, they can't stop it. They can't stop it. And Pop is just sitting there looking at him. He's shaking his head. He's driving him crazy. But then all of a sudden the play works. And he's like, Manu Ginobili, push him, shoot the ball, shoot the ball. All of a sudden he jacks it up as the clock is winding down. It goes and he just said, Lord. He's looking at these guys. Pop, even as he's coaching them and nobody knows this team better than him, he's sitting there and he's just shaking his head to some degree because he understands that there are things transpiring with this San Antonio Spurs team that you just can't teach, you don't coach. They're on their own mission. I'm talking about the players here. I'm not talking about just Popovich that held it against Danny Green all year long, that he lost in the NBA Finals because he left. He went and darted down the court, and that's how Ray Allen got open.
Yeah.
I'm talking about these players. They're just on a mission, Skip. It's a different kind of mission. And just looking into their eyes, I'm trying to tell you, it's a different thing. They don't just want the title. I believe they want Miami.
I
This
know
is where they are.
No. And that's why I keep saying and tweeting, 2 down, 6 to go, because that's how they're thinking. But they know that the next 2 will not be easy. I think they're looking more forward to playing Miami than to having to win 2 more games against this team, especially in that building in Oklahoma City. And so,
but what I'm saying is, you know the Spurs well. And so what does it mean to you that they're not just looking for the title? They want Miami. You don't usually see a Spurs team like that. I saw them like that years ago against the Lakers.
I know, but they said
But
this.
you don't usually see them like this.
No, but Pop said it from opening day of training camp.
Right.
He showed them the tape of Game 6. he shamed Danny Green in front of the team and said, why did you leave LeBron after he missed the three and you went down to try to cherry pick an easy basket when all we needed was one stop and the game is over? And the ball bounds right back to LeBron, who's wide open and makes the three that kept them barely alive. So Popovich, for the first time in his coaching career, decided to hang on to a loss and make it the mission and the cause of this entire season. I love that. But I'm not counting my chickens yet, and I don't think they are either. So I don't think it's over because I'm not going to underestimate the dynamic duo that is Durant and Westbrook. If you're telling me they're just completely overrated, okay, that's your take. I'm not saying they're overrated.
I'm not saying they're overrated.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're overrated at all. I'm saying that San Antonio is better. They're on a different kind of mission, and Oklahoma City is not at full force. If they were at full force, this would be an entirely different series. I think it would be tied 1-1 right now. But I'm telling you, they just look as if they are toying with Oklahoma City because they're big boys. Oklahoma City has no answer for their size. No answer.
All right, so Bayless says the series doesn't begin until the road team wins. Spurs at Thunder Sunday, 8:30 Eastern. We shall see. Last night's loss, we're going to still talk about this game, was the worst loss for the Thunder in playoff franchise history. And now the Thunder have to try and come back into this series. And it's not easy, especially when your dynamic duo is not on the same page. Let's listen.
It's easy for you to go and hide and run and be negative and clash, but it's hard for you to stay positive at a time like this. And when we lost by a lot, 2 games in a row, so it's hard for you to stay together. But we have a group full of guys that's not front runners, and we figure it out. That's all we got to do: come in and figure it out, stay together.
And that's what teammates do. That's what leaders do, man. We get on each other. We come back and, we talk about it, and then we come out and, like nothing ever happened.
Kevin and Russell, obviously have a lot of respect for one another. But it was based off of defensive coverages. And I like that. I like that they were frustrated that we gave up those threes.
Westbrook seen yelling at Durant going into that huddle. So here's the question, Stephen A. You heard what they had to say. Is this a bad sign for the Thunder?
No. Not really. I mean, listen, you don't like to see that, but it happens all the time. We understand that. And in this particular instance, y'all, being at the game, Russell Westbrook was absolutely right. There were on at least 2 or 3 occasions, Durant was asleep defensively. And, obviously he's the reigning league MVP. He's a superstar. We all know how I feel about Kevin Durant, but nobody's flawless. And he wasn't last night. Kevin Durant in that first half, I mean, there was a point where he went like 16 minutes without a point. I mean, he was just non-existent. And that's just offensively. But defensively, there were glaring deficiencies. Had his back turned, guys were sliding behind him, getting open behind the three-point line. He was missing his rotation assignments. And that's what Russell Westbrook was getting on him about. And I thought that Russell Westbrook was absolutely right to do so. It's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But in the end, Let's understand here, this wasn't one of those scenarios or situations at the time that Russell Westbrook was doing that. This wasn't one of those scenarios or situations where Russell Westbrook was out of line. Russell Westbrook was making the point, like, the game ain't over. You got to get your head into this. They're making runs, and you got to make sure that you're on top of it defensively. And Kevin Durant wasn't. You had guys who were undersized that were scattering around, trying to cover whatever shooter San Antonio had out there, whether it was Ginobili, it was Green, it was Patty Mills, it was Parker, the list goes on and on. They're scattering, hustling to get to their defensive assignments, and Kevin Durant was missing his. And that's what Russell Westbrook was pointing out. Now, some people sit there and say, who's Russell Westbrook? Because, that's KD, and you don't do that, blah, blah, blah. No, not this time. Yet last night, at the time that Russell Westbrook was making that point, he was absolutely correct. I saw it myself. I mean, it was 2 to 3 assignments that Kevin Durant, he was spinning. I mean, it was like his head was on a swivel. He had missed his assignments. And San Antonio had scored because of it. So I give Russell Westbrook, credit for pointing that out. It's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things because that's an aberration. That's not something that happens to Kevin Durant very often where he just seems out of it, whether it's on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. That's not who Kevin Durant is. It's clearly an aberration, but that doesn't mean that Russell Westbrook was wrong at the time he pointed that out, because he wasn't.
On this point, my friend, I am going to completely agree with you. I thought this was a healthy shouting match. But I will also point out that several times in playoffs past, I have sat right here in this chair and said that Durant and Westbrook had unhealthy shouting matches. That was when Durant was shouting at Russell for jacking up shots that Kevin thought he should have taken. And if there is any takeaway from the first two games that I have some issue with, it's that Russell did take, 45 more, he took 45 shots to 35 for Kevin in those combined two games. So he took 10 more shots. And both of them only made 16 shots. On Kevin's part, that's 46%, so that's pretty good. But on Russell's part, 36%, not so great. So, again, I think that's going to have to balance up if they're going to have a chance in Game 3 or Game 4. But I'm with you. I've said for years, Russell is not a point guard. But in this case, he showed a little bit of point guard style leadership to say, hey, Kevin, think. What are you doing? Because, remember, it was still a 5-point game with 2.5 minutes left in the half. And San Antonio goes on an 11-2 run because Kevin left Danny Green twice. Just left him. You can't leave Danny Green because, as we know, he can get very hot-handed. He was hot-handed last night. He can be cold the next game. But last night, he left him twice. Danny Green hits 2 threes in that 11-2 run. And I think in Oklahoma City's head at halftime, the game was over. So Russell's saying, what are you doing? But that wasn't about who's getting to shoot. That was about playing defense, which has been the issue facing the Thunder so far.
Well, the thing about it is, listen, you're right about that. In terms of the quintessential prototypical point guard, we know that Russell Westbrook is not that. But he's the greatest athlete at that position in NBA history, as far as I'm concerned, between him and Derrick Rose. And we all know that he's a scorer. And the legitimate argument could be made, get a point guard and put him at your 2, because his scoring is so prolific.
I agree.
They may be even more lethal if you have it. And that's a discussion for another day. But at the same time, let's also take into account that these 10 more shots that he's taken than Kevin Durant. Yeah, it's easy to say that he should not be shooting more than Kevin Durant, and for the most part, I'm usually right with you. But in this particular series, watching it unfold, looking at the way they collapse on Kevin Durant, including Kawhi Leonard, it's a hell of a lot easier for Russell Westbrook to get his shot off against a Tony Parker or a Danny Green or even a Manu Ginobili on the occasion that happens, as opposed to Kevin Durant being collapsed on by Kawhi Leonard and whoever rolls over to help him. Not to mention the fact that Scott Brooks tried to make an adjustment yesterday, which I thought worked in the first quarter. At some point in time, instead of having Durant and Russell Westbrook out on the court at the same time, he constantly had one of them on the court while the other was on the bench. So if you're Russell Westbrook and you're out there with a bunch of dudes that can't shoot, it makes sense why you would take those shots. If you're Kevin Durant and you're out there under the same scenario, but you're being collapsed on by a bigger Kawhi Leonard, not bigger than Kevin Durant, but bigger than most defenders, Kawhi Leonard along with others that are collapsing on him, you can understand why Kevin Durant might shoot just a tad bit less than a Russell Westbrook. So it makes sense on that level, and I don't think in this particular scenario it can be held against Russell Westbrook that he took 10 more shots than him. If he were on the court at the same time with Kevin Durant, that would be different. But considering that they were on the court at different intervals, I can understand how it transpired that way.
All I have to say is I sure hope you're right about your revised prediction, Spurs in 5.
That's what he said. That's what the man said in San Antonio.
You better be Stephen A. Smith.
The unofficial mayor by association.
No, he's not.
No.
He's the assistant mayor at best.
Not of San Antonio. I have no desire. I have no desire to be a politician here in San Antonio. South Beach is a different matter.
Okay, but by association, no.
Skip can have that.
We're all prejudiced in one way or the other. If I see a black kid in a hoodie and it's late at night, I'm walking to the other side of the street. And if on that side of the street there's a guy that has tattoos all over his face, white guy, bald head, tattoos everywhere, I'm walking back to the other side of the street. And the list goes on of stereotypes that we all live up to and are fearful of.
I would rather you call me the N-word than you and I make eye contact and you see my face and you cross the street. I'd much rather.
Because?
Because of at least I know.
Mark Cuban, in an interview from a Nashville conference where he was asked about banned Clippers owner Donald Sterling, Cuban's point was that we all have prejudices, we all are flawed human beings. Chris Carter obviously reacting, strong opinion of his own to what Cuban had to say. Stephen A., I'll start with you first. Your reaction to both?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I first heard about Mark Cuban's comments, what was conveyed to me was that if I see a black person wearing a hoodie, I'm going to the other side of the street. And that rubbed me the wrong way. And then I went and I saw the video and I watched it in its entirety, the entire 2 minutes and 42 seconds of the clip where he was talking about that. And I want to emphasize that I have absolutely, positively no problem whatsoever with what Mark Cuban had to say. Zero. There was nothing remotely offensive about what this man had to say. Now, I understand that me being a black man, an African American, that people are going to be rubbed the wrong way by those statements. They will need to get over it. Because if we're listening to what he said, it wasn't about ethnicity. He talked about black folks in a hoodie walking across the street. He talked about a white dude in the same sentence with tats all over his head, and he's bald, and he'd walk back to the other side of the street. So that's both ends of the spectrum. And now it has to bring us home to where he's really going here. And where he's going, Skip Bayless, is something that I've completely and repeatedly have tried to disseminate to people, to a younger generation of folks, regardless of ethnicity, and particularly folks within the black community who are young. And that is simply this. Presentation matters. How you look matters. How you carry yourself matters. And for anybody that wants to act like it doesn't, I'm going to tell you they're full of it and they know it. Because I don't care how hood radish you look. When you want some money and you think that you have an opportunity to get it and you go for a job interview, you're going to dress the part and you're going to look the part to facilitate you possibly taking advantage of that opportunity. So let's not act like we don't know that presentation matters. And let's also keep in mind that we don't get to bring up the Miami Heat, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Ray Allen, and the crew of the Miami Heat, who we should all still applaud to this day for the position that they took when they put on their hoodies in regards to the Trayvon Martin fatality when he got shot and killed. What they were alluding to and what they were talking about is because you have a hoodie on and you are a young black man, it's not a license for somebody to assume you're a criminal and to shoot you. That is entirely different than it not being a license for somebody to see you and they may be fearful, and as a result of that, they decide to walk in a different direction or the other side of the street. That's somebody's inalienable right. They're not bothering you, but they're fearful of whether or not you're going to bother them based on your presentation. We want to act like it doesn't matter, but it does matter. I have been on this show on many, many occasions. It's one thing to have a couple of tats. It's another thing entirely to have tats all over your body like you straight out of prison. It's a problem. And people want to act like it's not. But it is. It doesn't matter whether you're black, Hispanic, white, or whatever the case may be. There are segments of our society that are uncomfortable with that. And because they're uncomfortable with that, it makes them raise their eyebrows, creates a little trepidation and apprehension, makes them look at you in a certain way that because they're not comfortable. And in the case of Mark Cuban, he is a billionaire. He has owned the Dallas Mavericks since the year 2000. He purchased them for about $285 million. They're probably worth, more than double that right now with the exceptional job that he has done. And he is an employer. He hires people. He doesn't need anybody's money. He has his own. And what he did, to me, should damn near be applauded. Because what he's saying is something that a younger generation of individuals who aspire to be entrepreneurs, who aspire to be gainfully employed and elevate their quality of life. He's saying, you know what? There are potential roadblocks and impediments that are self-created because the manner in which you present yourself and how you look matters. Now, that may not be something that everyone's comfortable with, but it happens to be true. No matter what anybody wants to say. And so I just want to be on the record right here, right now. When I first heard about it, I was uncomfortable. When I watched the video in its entirety, the Mark Cuban that I know has never, ever come across to me as a racist. And I found absolutely positively nothing racially insensitive about what that man said. Nothing.
I applaud you for everything you just said. I think it's powerful, and I hope the younger members of our viewing audience will take it to heart and to mind. Now, let's stay on Cuban's comments, because I also want to discuss what Chris Carter said on Mike and Mike, but since you stayed on Cuban, let's stay there. Here's the only potential downside I see to the remarks he made that we just saw. You could read between the lines that he is suggesting that everybody, including all the owners in the NBA, have some prejudice in them. The white owners, obviously. Sure. So, I mean, I guess he could say everybody, but okay. So he's just saying deep down we all have our this prejudice or that prejudice, and you just can't eliminate them. Is he saying between the lines then that we should give Donald Sterling a little bit of a break? That's how that could come across in the commissioner's interpretation. It could come across as muddying the waters at a time that the commissioner needs every owner to be 1,000% behind him as we approach voting day. June, what is it, 3rd?
June 3rd.
June 3rd.
I think.
Okay, go ahead.
I think that's a separate subject, Skip, that takes a separate segment to answer that question directly. But go ahead.
Well, I think I want you to answer it right now because that's how I'm reading it. And I'm going to remind you to keep this in big picture context. It was Mark Cuban, the day after the Sterling private conversation broke on TMZ, the Monday after when we first talked about it on this show. Yeah. Remember? Yes. Mark Cuban was saying slippery slope that we're on here. And I wrote down the quote this morning. I made sure I took it right off his tape. He said, in terms of just saying a blanket, let's kick him out, meaning Donald Sterling, I don't want to go that far because that's more about Donald Sterling and about his position, and it's also about who's next. So Mark is saying that then if you open that Pandora's box on that slippery slope, one cliche after another, but you could then hold another person's feet to fire. You could say, this owner said this. Well, wait, this owner has this skeleton in his closet, so he's saying then we'd have to make a decision on this owner and this owner and this owner. And he was making the case that, hey, it was an illegally recorded conversation. So Mark Cuban was the only owner who, even though he did say the comments by Donald Sterling were abhorrent, was the word he used, he said, let's hold off on kicking him out of the league. So now we have that comment along with this comment of some objectivity, of step back objectivity of saying, hey, let's all look inside ourselves here. And I don't think our new NBA commissioner is going to love those two comments together from Mark Cuban because it will not help the commissioner's case.
Bottom line is this, Skip Bayless. What Mark Cuban said is entirely different than what Donald Sterling said. And just because people want to try to interpret it as being one and the same, because there are some people who will go there, they're simply going to come across as misinformed. The fact is that when you listened to Donald Sterling and his comments, and you juxtapose that to Mark Cuban, Mark Cuban is being honest about prejudices that may very well exist inside of all of us.
Okay.
You think as black people we don't look at white folks and certain thoughts come to our mind about who they are and how they are or whatever? If somebody heard some of the thoughts that emanates from the black community, they'd consider us prejudiced and bigoted. Not racist, because racist is the connotation is that somebody is inferior to you simply because of their race, their ethnicity. And black folks we don't have the cachet to feel that way. So racism and black folks doesn't make sense, but bigotry and prejudice certainly does. And I've made that point in the past. But what Mark Cuban is highlighting is something that may very well exist inside of all of us.
Okay.
And nobody worth their salt can dispute that.
Okay.
Donald Sterling sat up there and talked about your house, your cars, the clothes that you wear. Would you have that if it were not for me? You know, I mean, this man sounded straight off the plantation. There is a difference. And so anybody that tries to compare Mark Cuban's comments to that of Donald Sterling, they're just misinformed. I don't have time to talk to those people, okay? But in the end, but in the end, Skip, what it comes down to, like you said, you're talking about what owners may feel, the slippery slope.
Yeah.
Of course, though that Billionaires Boys Club, they have their thoughts and their opinions. And it's not something that we would all like or appreciate. And you best believe that stuff came across when they were sitting across from the negotiating table with NBA players who they believe you wouldn't be making this money if it were not for us. But at the same time, it's one thing to think it and suspect it and believe it.
Okay.
It's another thing for you to be slapped in the face with the reality because an audio tape is out highlighting exactly what you feel.
Okay. Were you at all surprised by what Chris Carter said on Mike and Mike?
No, but I think that in this particular instance, I don't agree with Chris Carter. And that's my man. I love him. We talk all the time. And I'm quite sure we're going to talk after he realizes that I disagree with him. But I think what Chris Carter is leaning on was the comment about the hoodie and walking across the street. I don't think that he's taking into account the other side when Mark Cuban said, if you're a white guy with tats all over your face and your head, I'd walk back to the other side of the street.
Okay.
Mark Cuban was simply highlighting the prejudices that exist across the spectrum, not highlighted and designated specifically for the black community. That's the difference.
Okay, I'm with you on this. And again, I have obviously never walked in Chris Carter's shoes, so I respect his opinion on his personal opinion.
So do I.
But you know how I feel about that word. How many times on this show I'm talking about the N-word spoken by a white person to a black person ending with a hard E-R. That word is the most evil word in our language. That's a fighting word to me. So the whole concept of a white man calling a black man that word, and that being a lesser offense than a white man making eye contact with a black man coming toward him and cutting across the street, it just seems to me, from my vantage point, like, wow, really? It would seem like the other would be much worse, but that's just me.
Well, let me say this, and this is coming from I'm the black dude on the show, Skip. And in the end, as offensive as I may find that word, as you would say, with the hard ER, even though it doesn't really matter. If that word came at me from a white person, I'm very, very offended. I do want to beat them down. There's no doubt.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you right now, I can accept that with a smile on my face compared to what I heard come out of Donald Sterling's mouth. What I heard from Donald Sterling made me feel like he believes, you know, like it's almost like the Clippers is another form of a cotton field.
Okay.
That's how the words coming from Donald Sterling hit me.
Okay.
No N-word spewing out of anybody's mouth can make me feel like that.
Okay. Even though, point of order, even in the privately, illegally recorded tape, we did not hear Sterling use the N-word
at all.
Right?
Yeah.
So just point of order.
That's
right. I'm with you, though. I get it.
All right.
I respect it.
So listen, Mark Cuban was asked about keeping bigotry out of the NBA. He said, you don't. There's no law against stupid.
I want the best quarterback to start. Whoever plays, whoever.
In your mind, who is that right now? Who's the best quarterback right now?
Yeah.
Brian Hoyer.
By how much?
It's a good question. I would tell you that probably a substantial margin. I would say that because here's a guy that's a 5 or 6 year veteran that has been in the league, that knows the defenses, that reads it quicker, that understands. Like he's got an advanced calculus degree, and Johnny's good at math, but I don't know if he's in the advanced calculus stages yet.
All right, Browns general manager Ray Farmer speaking to a local radio station. Browns head coach Mike Pettin said Manziel had been inconsistent. Here's the question. What do you make of how the Browns are treating Manziel so far? We welcome in our NFL analyst, Ryan Clark. Question for you, sir.
Well, let me start.
You want to start?
Yes.
Okay,
please.
You can have it.
Is that okay with you?
Ryan, are you sure?
I am positive. I need your feedback on this as a current player. How you, if you were in that Browns locker room, would be responding to this. I'm offended for Johnny Manziel's sake. I think this is beneath what dignity he did earn in the Southeastern Conference as the Heisman Trophy winner and a player who dominated that conference for 2 years. To go to substantially ahead and inconsistent after a couple of mini-camp practices is just so unnecessary to me. Yet, I'm going to stand by what I said the day after the draft. And I wrote a piece for ESPN.com that ran last Friday about this. And I went deeply into the fact that I fear that Johnny Manziel wound up at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm going to reiterate my position that on draft night, several sources have told me that the GM we just heard from, Ray Farmer, not completely sold on Johnny. Obviously, they passed Johnny twice before in the draft. And that the current and new offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan, who had his issues with his father with RG3 in Washington, not completely sold on Johnny Manziel. But Johnny had clicked during an interview with the quarterback coach, who clearly is below in the pecking order the offensive coordinator. Dal Loggins is the quarterback coach. He's only 33 years of age, and they really connected. So Johnny wanted to work with Dal, and so he texts him on the fly after Dallas passed Johnny at 16 to say, hey, I'm hearing somebody else is about to take me. I haven't said this before, but the somebody else was Kansas City at 23. So they're about to have a chance to trade up to 22 with Philadelphia. Philly's saying our pick is for sale here. We don't want 22. We'll be happy going back to 26 if you want to make this trade. So Johnny texts Dal Loggins, hurry up and trade up and take me. And as you know, Dal Loggins then forwarded the text on to the owner, who said, wow, he wants to play in Cleveland that badly? Let's pull a trigger on this thing. Okay? Now I'm looking at fate, how it works in your life on draft night. Obviously, you didn't get drafted, so you got to choose where you could go. But in Johnny's case, you tell me, would Andy Reid be treating Johnny Manziel this way if he were a Kansas City Chief right now, which I believe he would have been? One pick later, he would have gone to Andy Reid. And they have Alex Smith as the incumbent, and I'm sure Alex would play another year or so. Johnny would be groomed, but he wouldn't be treated this way, substantially behind. I mean, you don't need to say that publicly. So how does that hit you from a distance of being in the wrong place at the wrong time?
It seems like a little overcompensation by the Cleveland Browns, trying to quell the Johnny Manziel hysteria by the media or by the fans, trying to say, you know what, Brian Hoyer is here and Johnny Manziel is way down here, so let's not call for him, let's not push for him, let's not say he has to be our first day starter. So I think this a little, they're trying to position themselves in a way where they can kind of get the fever down, the Johnny football fever. But I do think a little bit of it is disheartening for Johnny Manziel. He's supposed to be inconsistent in his first few days of OTAs. He's supposed to be learning. Brian Hoyer is supposed to be substantially smarter than he is. And I don't think those are things that need to be said, because those are things that are usually understood. Now, if Johnny Manziel came in and just blew it up and knew the playbook by today, I think those are things you would praise him for in the media. But instead of just continuing to knock him down in that manner, I wouldn't like that as a player, as his teammate. And especially from what you're hearing, whether it be Brian Hoyer, Joe Thomas saying, listen, the kid comes in, he works, he takes notes, he's quiet, he just wants to play football. And so when you have the teammates and the players saying this, you would want him to be treated better. I do like this, though, what they're doing in Cleveland. They're going to give him a chance to play. Right. If it works out and he's the better quarterback, he's going to be the day one starter, as opposed to the Blake Bortles situation where it's like, you know what, there is no hope, no chance. that you can work your way into this position. I would feel differently about that as a player. So at least as a player, you feel like if he continues to do what he's supposed to do, if he gives us the better chance to win over Hoyer, this guy would be our starter. But I agree with you totally. An Andy Reid situation wouldn't be like this. But I think it's also because the quarterback who's there now would be the starter. There would be no quarterback controversy. It wouldn't be people calling for him. And, you know, I think everybody's so weary of the Tim Tebow, Mark Sanchez situation, and they're kind of mishandling Johnny in that way.
Right. Stephen A.
I think both of your points are valid, but I don't think y'all are saying it as plainly as it needs to be said. The Cleveland Browns should be fined by Commissioner Roger Goodell because they are clearly engaging in something that I've never seen or heard of before. And I would call it organizational or franchise hazing. That's what they're doing to Johnny Manziel. They are picking this dude apart. They are excoriating him. They are embarrassing him. They are bringing a level of elevated humiliation to the equation. What on earth would possess a general manager to come out and say that my starting quarterback, who has been with my team for the last couple of years, is substantially or significantly better than a dude that's been there for 10 days? What's the purpose of saying something like that? It makes no sense whatsoever. All your points are valid. They don't want a replica of the Tim Tebow thing and all of this other stuff and Johnny Hollywood or whatever. But think about this. Haslam, the owner, comes out and he speaks about how Johnny's a backup and needs to act like one. The coach is sitting there like he's doing the right thing. He's just shutting up and playing football. Yeah, he's been inconsistent, blah, blah, blah. The GM comes out. Mind you, in the same breath, they said, Johnny Manziel has been a model citizen. He's worked hard. He comes, he goes about the business of doing his work. He's keeping his mouth shut. He's got his head down. He's working hard. Well, if he's doing all of those things, forget the owner, forget the GM, forget the head coach. How about the fact that before any of you guys were those things, you were a human being? What did he do to deserve this? He's done nothing. According to you, he's conducting himself the way that he is supposed to. So instead of doing the human and decent thing by simply treating him like any other player, what you have to do is ward off the momentum that would ultimately be geared in his direction because he was a Heisman Trophy winner and a standout elite college football player. And you're just going to go there and just at every turn compromise his ability to try to be the best football player he could possibly be because you're proverbially or figuratively speaking throwing him to the wolves, all because you want to win you want to win in the court of public opinion. That's what it takes. You're patting the coach, you're farming the GM, you're hassling the owner, and that's what you would decide to do. This is weak, man, and it's unnecessary, and nobody's calling it out. If I'm Roger Goodell, I'm going like this. How is this any different than hazing? Yeah, you might not sit there and give some dude a wedgie, or you might not sit there and do whatever it is that you do to a guy when you're hazing him. But figuratively speaking, that's what you're doing to him. You're raking him through the coals when you're on record admitting there's nothing that he has done to deserve it. If Johnny Football were a scrub on the college level, you wouldn't have to talk about him at all. If he were an average player, you wouldn't have to talk about him at all. But because he's elite, as a redshirt freshman, he wins the Heisman. He comes back as a sophomore. He's a finalist for the Heisman. He flats out balls with having one of the worst, if not the worst, defense in college football. Because he succeeded on a very high level, you want to put him through this? It's wrong. It's wrong, and the commissioner or somebody needs to, I mean, I'm being facetious to some degree because I understand the commissioner's not going to get involved in something like this, but it's just that ridiculous to me that grown damn men who are owners, executives, a head coach would feel the need to pile on a kid like this, all because you want to win in the court of public opinion. What kind of leaders are they?
Okay. So
it's weak, man.
I agree with
It's
your
weak.
sentiment that the commissioner is not going to fine them for hazing. Trust me. But I
Of
like
course
your
not.
point.
I know that.
But I want to frame it with this point. The quarterback coach I referred to, Dal Loggins, the next day then made, or it's a couple days later, made public the text which included the phrase, let's wreck the league together. Now, Ryan Clark might say, hey, young man, you really think you're going to come in and wreck my league the first year? Right? I mean, there's part of you who'd say, hey, come on now.
I kind of like it.
I do too. I love it.
I like it.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? He got to go and show and prove.
But wait. Guys, love it all you want. That's not the point. The point is it was a private text to the team he wanted to draft him. He didn't make it public.
No.
They did. And if they made it public, you're grown men. And you're throwing a kid under the bus like this? How can they be trusted, guys?
They
Tell
cannot.
me, if you're Ryan Clark, you've been in this league for years. Ryan Clark, you're an NFL player that's been in this league for years. You tell me, how are you feeling about the Cleveland Browns organization right now, when from the owner to the GM to the coach, grown men are in CYA mode, and we all know what that means. Cover your you-know-what. Yeah. They all to protect themselves against the momentum that's building for Johnny Football. You're willing to sit there and throw this kid under the bus while at the same time acknowledging he's been a model citizen. He's done it, put his head down. He's done his job. He's done what he's supposed to do. Then why are you putting him through this? If it were Bill Parcells or Bill Belichick, you know what they would say? He's here. He's just like any other player on the team. He's got to earn his stripes. Yeah. That's all. They're not going to sit here and disrespect him.
And by the
way,
way,
not doing that.
I think also too is very few coaches. You talk about Belichick and Parcells that are as secure in themselves, in them jobs. These are new. These are new people new to these
Everybody's
positions.
new.
Yeah. Everybody's new.
Ryan, what about the owner? Hold on. What about the owner? The owner did it.
Yeah, he's just not smart.
Well, he's only 2 years.
Yeah,
he don't have to do that.
No, none of them have to do it. I'm not. Well, what I'm saying is, I'm not okaying it. I'm not saying that it's something that they should do. What I am saying is, I see what type of people they are and why they are doing it. They don't understand it. They don't know how to handle it. They've never been in this position.
That is
correct. So for them, that's why
Ryan Clark.
That's why they're covering their tails, because they don't know how. They don't understand how to handle it.
Hold on, whoa. How many years did you play for Mike Tomlin?
8. Well, 7. I played for him 7. Played for Pittsburgh.
Do you trust him?
I do.
Do you trust him?
I do.
Do you trust Mike Tomlin?
I do.
How long did it take? Hold on. How long did it take you to trust him?
Probably 2 or 3 years to really trust him.
But what I'm saying is, what he showed you from day one, was that not Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, he earned it.
What I'm saying, was that not him?
Yeah.
So these guys, no, my point is, he is who he is. These guys might pet and farm it. They're showing us who they are. You're gonna throw Johnny Football under the bus. Who's next? Who's next?
Okay, here's what really steams me to close this discussion. We're talking not about Tom Brady as the incumbent here. Brian Hoyer is coming off complete knee reconstruction after he had a really nice, I can't remember what it was, 3 or 4 games, something like that. Did you guys play against him? Not then.
We didn't play against him. He got hurt before.
And he was really good for the Browns for those 2.5 or 3 games, whatever it was. But come on. It's Brian Hoyer we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Not Brady.
Johnny, a little bit of respect.
Every summer, NFL.com reveals their top 100 players in the league. On last night's reveal, Tony Romo ranked at 71 with 11 quarterbacks ahead of him, making him the 12th ranked quarterback in the league. How many quarterbacks would you at home, you here at the desk, put ahead of Tony Romo? We welcome in our NFL analyst, Antonio Pierce, OGAP as I call you. Welcome back. How many quarterbacks would you put ahead of Tony Romo?
Well, you know, Jaws has a list, the NFL has a list, ESPN has a list, well, AP has his quarterback list. And I played against a lot of these guys, so I broke it down, did all my stats, but going off of last year, I would have him 9th overall.
Really?
I would have him 9th.
Higher than I expected.
This is the thing about Romo. I mean, we look at so much of the bad and the critical mistakes he makes at certain moments, right? He can have a game like he did against the Broncos where he's just lighting it up. And that one throw,
don't remind me.
We talked about that. We talk about that all year long. But when you look at what he did last year.
I'm still talking about it.
And we always, and this list is off of last year's performance. 3,800 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 64 completion ratio. That's also with a lot of drama that he has to deal with from the coaching, the play calling, the ownership. There's more drama surrounding him and that team than any other quarterback that's above him has to face on a constant basis. So with that being said, he handles it well. He just has to, and that team has to, get over the hump. They have to give over that 1 or 2 games to get to that next round. That's the divisional or the conference championship. Don't think they're a Super Bowl team again. I think they lost. I think that's passed them by. But when you look at these other quarterbacks that I got ahead of them, Peyton Manning, Rivers, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, and Roethlisberger, only one I kind of battled with was Russell Wilson and Cam. But besides that, I wouldn't take another quarterback. Even Matt Ryan wouldn't take him. Joe Flacco wouldn't take him.
All right, that's for Stephen A.
Well, I think it's about right. Listen, I'm no Tony Romo fan. When I'm a critic of him, I'm really a critic of the Cowboys, not so much him. I understand that he puts up big numbers in the regular season. He's just prone to make the mistake at the most inopportune of times. But at the same time, when you look at the totality of his work, his body of work, and what he does over the course of 60 minutes in a football game, there's no question that he's better than 2/3 of the quarterbacks in the league. You've got the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Breeses of the world. There's no question that they're on that list. You look at the Big Ben Roethlisberger, I put him ahead of Tony Romo. You look at the Joe Flaccos of the world, regardless of his numbers not being as good as Tony Romo overall, he's a Super Bowl champion. I'm going to give him an edge over a guy that has one playoff win in 8 years. I look at a Matt Ryan. I'm not Antonio Pierce. I'm going to put Matt Ryan ahead of Tony Romo. I just think that I like Matt Ryan better. I'm definitely going to put Cam and Kaepernick and Russell Wilson ahead of Tony Romo. I just feel that way about it. Andrew Luck is going to go ahead of Tony Romo. I'm going to say that plain as day as well. Of course, the bad man that he is, Aaron Rodgers, is going above everybody. I'm just going to look at it from that perspective and say that Tony Romo is about where he should be. But I'm also going to add that I understand that Tony Romo is a pretty damn good quarterback when healthy. It's just that he's prone to make the big mistake. And because he makes the big mistake, it's held against him. But the game is 60 minutes long. And over the course of 60 minutes, far more often than not, he wreaks havoc. So I'm going to give credit where credit is due and say that he's about where he should be, or, maybe a little bit lower than that. Maybe there's 10 quarterbacks ahead of him instead of 12. But it's somewhere, it's in the ballpark. It's in the ballpark.
Wait, did you say that you're going to put Aaron Rodgers above everyone?
Yeah, that bad man.
Help me out.
Yeah.
What's he done since he won that Super Bowl? Was it like 6 or 7 years ago? Exactly. What's he done?
He has more like 3, but he has a Super Bowl title. He's one of the best. He may be the best pure passer I've ever seen. Him or Dan Marino. I got that kind of love for Aaron Rodgers, Skip. We don't need to debate this anymore. You're not changing my mind.
Back to the question at hand. I also made my list, and I was intrigued by yours. I will point out that last year, a stat that I love, QBR, it's the most complete, encompassing stat, it had Tony Romo 12th. So you can argue he's kind of right on the list we're talking about. He's right where he should be in that ballpark. I ranked him 13th on my list, and I am a long-time, lifelong Cowboy fan, born and raised. I can't help it. I got born into it, okay? So I'm done with Tony Romo, so I'm not maybe objective anymore because I've seen enough. I don't think they can go places with him at this stage of his career, and I'm not even talking about the back stuff. I'm just talking about psychologically flawed and shot, but that's just me. But just on pure ability, I've got those top 4, and I will definitely put Aaron Rodgers in the top 4, but I go Brady, Peyton, Brees, and Aaron Rodgers. Then I have a second echelon of veteran quarterbacks, and you talked about Roethlisberger. I got to throw Eli in there, obviously, with his 2 rings. Phillip Rivers, and I struggle with Matt Ryan. I'm with you, and I'm intrigued. I couldn't pull the trigger on that one, but I went ahead and put him above Tony Romo, and maybe he doesn't belong. Maybe he hasn't done enough. So that's a debatable one to me. Then we got the young guys. I still got RG3 above Tony Romo just because of what I saw in his rookie year. And I'm a fan, and last year he wound up in a horrendous situation with the coaching conflict, as you well know, and then he rushed back from his knee. I still think from what I saw, he belongs with the kid quarterbacks, with Russell Wilson and Cam and Kaepernick. And that leaves me with Romo at 13. Now, where I disagree with both of you is I don't have Andrew Luck above Tony Romo yet. I have not seen enough. I'm sorry. I think he's been prematurely coronated. And I haven't seen enough in the postseason. He threw, 7 interceptions in 2 playoff games this year. They should have lost the first one, and they lost the second one badly with his 4 picks at New England. So I don't know. I can't
even
quite
with all those fourth quarter comebacks.
Yeah,
I'm just
that's what right there. That intrigues me.
But I can show you a lot of other games where he was average at best. He had a game at San Diego this year on Monday Night Football where I kept waiting for Andrew Luck and I couldn't find him. But he has had some games. But I'm not. I need to see some more credentials, and then Stephen A. can say, well, Romo's won 1 playoff game in his whole career. He has put up consistently huge numbers. In the last couple of years, his touchdowns, interceptions have been spectacular.
Skip Bayless.
But he's got 8 and 8 to show for it,
Stephen A., go ahead.
Skip Bayless. Tony Romo is the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. They haven't made the playoffs in 4 years. Andrew Luck is approaching his 3rd year. He's completed 2 seasons. Both years he's been in the postseason. Plus he led that sensational comeback against Kansas City. Plus he has the fourth quarter comebacks. There is no question that Andrew Luck deserves to be rated ahead of Tony Romo. There is no question.
There's huge question because you're giving him a pass for the horrendous 3 interceptions that he threw against Kansas City to dig the home hole that they had to climb out of. Sorry.
No, I'm not giving him I'm not giving him a pass, Skip. I'm saying that a pass isn't required to be measured above Tony Romo.
Oh.
I mean, you don't need a pass to be rated above Tony Romo. He's been the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys for 8 years. He has 1 playoff victory. He is known just as much for his penchant for playing golf and being friends with Tiger Woods and being seen at college basketball games or NBA playoff games or shooting around at Cameron Indoor Stadium over the last year as he has been for throwing touchdown passes for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't need a pass for Andrew Luck to rate him above Tony Romo. Tony Romo's own accomplishments, or lack thereof, speaks for itself. You don't need a pass for Andrew Luck. You need a pass for. What do you need a pass for? For what?
Unfortunately, we're out of time, or I would continue this, but we have other subjects.
AP, do you want to say something quickly?
Go ahead.
You good?
We're good.
You're good on that.
Go ahead. For the next one. We'll wait till the season. We're in May debating quarterbacks right now. Let's see what happens.
All right. You'll join us a little later on in the show.
8 years, 1 playoff victory.
8 and 8 is what
By the
Stephen
way,
A. saying.
Eli Manning deserves to be ahead of Tony Romo.
Eli Manning, adding other people. He got him on there on the list, Stephen A.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next 6-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The History 300 at Charlotte, Saturday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC.
In this day and age, this country has really come a long way, putting any type of bigotry behind us, regardless of who it's towards, whether it's the LGBT community, whether it's xenophobia, fear of people from other countries. We've come a long way, and with that progress comes a price, where we're a lot more vigilant in and we're a lot less tolerant of different views. And it's not necessarily easy for everybody to adapt or evolve. I mean, we're all prejudiced in one way or the other. If I see a black kid in a hoodie and it's late at night, I'm walking to the other side of the street. And if on that side of the street there's a guy that has tattoos all over his face, white guy, bald head, tattoos everywhere, I'm walking back to the other side of the street. And the list goes on of stereotypes that we all live up to and are fearful of. And so in my businesses, try not to be hypocritical. I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I live in a glass house and it's not appropriate for me to throw stones. And so when I run into bigotry in organizations I control, I try to find solutions. I'll work with people. I'll send them to training. I'll send them to sensitivity training. I'll try to give them a chance to improve themselves, because I think helping people improve their lives, helping people engage with people they may fear or may not understand, and helping people realize that while we all have our prejudices and bigotries, we have to learn that it's an issue that we have to control, that it's part of my responsibility as an entrepreneur to try to solve it, not just to kick the problem down the road, because it does society, it does my company no good, it does my customers no good, it does society no good if my response to somebody and their racism or bigotry is to say, it's not right for you to be here, go take your attitude somewhere else.
Right, so that was Mark Cuban in its entirety. It was an interview from a Nashville conference where he was asked about banned Clippers owner Donald Sterling and his comments and the things that he said. Stephen A., you wanted to expand this topic. Go ahead, let's get your point.
Well, it's important to recognize the fact that as we sit up here on this show today and every day, I mean, the dynamic that we bring to the table, Skip Bayless being from Oklahoma, being in his 60s, me being from the streets of New York City, me being in my 40s, we come from two different worlds. And a lot of times people ask the question, how in God's name are you and Skip Bayless friends? And oftentimes I tell them we're not just friends, we're brothers. I love him dearly. And the reason why I have so much love for Skip is because of his level of sensitivity and his willingness to understand somebody from a different place than he's from, but more importantly, his willingness to be open about where he's coming from and why. One of the reasons why I constantly point to First Take and I look at this show for what it is, I often say on this show, I don't care what I'm doing, radio, Sports Center, reporting, writing columns, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter what I am on this show. This show is Skip's show. And I often say that for one reason and one reason only. I would never want to do First Take if it were not with this man. And the reason why is because of where he comes from. The fact that he's willing to be open is what we saw from Mark Cuban. I want to emphasize again, I have zero problem with what Mark Cuban had to say. Not only because of his honesty, his forthrightness, but more importantly, because of his accuracy. Mark Cuban is pointing out something that a bevy of folks within any minority community, if not America in total, needs to comprehend and embrace, particularly the younger generation. We have a younger generation out here that literally wants to debunk conventional wisdom, shove it aside, and march to their own beat. Because a few folks are successful, everybody thinks they can be that way. Everybody wants to look the way they want to look. They want to act the way they want to act. They want to conduct themselves the way they want to conduct themselves, but they got their hand out asking for opportunities and dollars and the elevation of a quality of life from somebody else. You don't get to do that. Mark Cuban could do what he wants to do because he's a billionaire. If Mark Cuban never works another day in his life and he gives up ownership of the Dallas Mavericks, he's going to be just fine. But when you don't have that privileged position that he has, you need to shut up and understand there's a level of capitulation and acquiescence that you have to engage in order to get the kind of things that you want. It doesn't mean you have to sell your soul. It doesn't mean you have to compromise your manhood, your blackness, or, Hispanic heritage or whatever the case may be. But it does mean that some level of conformity is something that you're going to have to adjust to. And a lot more times than not, it begins with your presentation, how you look, how you carry yourself, and more importantly, how you articulate yourself. One of the things that rakes my nerves outside of dudes walking around with their pants hanging below their backside, which rakes my nerves. I don't even like talking to dudes that do that, okay? One of the other things that rakes my nerves is this thing where everybody talks. Not everybody, but a lot of people from the younger generation talks, and the first words out of their mouth is, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? No, the hell I don't. You didn't say anything yet. Why would I know? Every other word, every other sentence is, you know what I'm saying? No, I don't. And so you have to understand that if you're a Mark Cuban, you're an employer. You have the power to employ other people. Part of the process that comes with it is one's presentation. How you carry yourself, how you present yourself, how much do you care about the importance of having to impress somebody else in order for you to get what you want, because that's the real world. And we look at the Jay-Z's and the P. Diddy's. I bring up those names because some people within other communities insult those guys because of music, because of lyrics or whatever. I am an admirer and a fan of theirs, because the same Jay-Z or P. Diddy I'll see in some jeans or whatever, I'll see suited down. I'll see P. Diddy in a Ciroc commercial. I'll see Jay-Z sitting there conducting business and being a businessman. And they carry themselves in a business environment when it's time for business. They adjust, and people ignore that. And all I'm saying is, whether it's Chris Carter speaking on Mike and Mike this morning, whether it's Mark Cuban provoking a response from Chris Carter because of what he's saying, Chris Carter is a friend. He and I communicate daily. We're going to talk again today. We talked this morning, or text this morning. I'm telling you, I understand where he's coming from because of the first part of what Mark Cuban said about walking across the street if you see a black dude with a hoodie on because you don't know what time it is. But I also listened to the entire tape and heard him say a bald-headed white dude with tats all over his body and his face and his head would make him equally uncomfortable. That is not racial. That is reality. And we have to accept it for what it is and move forward with making sure that folks understand you don't get to do what you want to do when you got your hand out asking other people to assist in the elevation of your quality of life. You have to conform, and they, to some degree anyway. And the younger generation, more than anybody else, needs to get that message. You don't get to hide behind Donald Sterling's racist rhetoric or what you perceive Mark Cuban to be, to excuse your unwillingness to conform and capitulate to some degree. Real world doesn't operate that way.
Allow me to say that I deeply appreciate the way you introed the remarks that you just made, and the feeling is mutual about why I do this show with my brother from another mother. I applaud every point you just made. You're on a soapbox that is like a pulpit to me, and I hope people will open their ears and hear, especially the younger viewers of this show, that we both cherish. Now, let's get back to what Cuban said. I'm just going to react as the white guy on the show. From a distance, the first thing that caught my ear and my eye and made me cringe was the reference to hoodie. It just seemed insensitive and incendiary in the wake of Trayvon Martin. I wish Mark had reached for a different analogy or a different stereotype, if you will. Then in the bigger picture, I'm going to stand by what I told you earlier in the show. And I'm reacting quickly to this. Maybe after I sleep on it, I'll see it a little differently. But it still strikes me that a Mark Cuban who has for years been friendly with Donald Sterling, owner to owner. I don't know if you could go to friends or not, but I know they are friendly. Yeah. And I know Mark has said from that day one, yes, that he likes him. He said that publicly the day after the tapes broke on TMZ. He likes Donald very much. And remember, that first day he did go into his slippery slope speech about, hey, let's hold off here before we just leap to kick him out of the league because we all live in our glass houses. And this smacked of the same kind of quote that we all have our prejudices. Clearly, there's some truth to what Mark Cuban is suggesting about all of us. We all have our biases, our stereotypes, our prejudices. But I must tell you, it's going to come off, I think, to the commissioner, the new commissioner, that Mark Cuban is in a way between the lines asking people to give Donald Sterling a little bit of a break here because we all have our issues that we're dealing with. And that was the point of the slippery slope comment the first day. Every owner could have a skeleton in his closet. Every owner could stumble in a private conversation that became public. Right. And then we'd have to make a a decision on that owner. Should we kick him out? And then should we kick him and him and him and kick him out? And Mark's saying, let's back off, let's calm down. And yet, I don't want anybody to calm down. I love it that at least we have a date. We have June 3rd. Stephen A. Smith is on the record. We better have a 29-0 vote.
Public.
And I'm public vote that we all know about. And if we have a 29-1 or 2, we need to know who the 1 and the 2 are. And if Mark Cuban is going to be one of those, I would like to know that. Maybe he has his reasons for not kicking out Donald Sterling. But again, I'm afraid that's how it's going to come across to a commissioner who may want to have a private conversation with Mark Cuban today.
Skip, let me say this to you. 2 points. Number one, I have a couple of friends who happen to be African American who own a business in the information technology field. And they're African Americans. They employ an abundance of white folks. And there are some times that there are white folks, they say, that get on their damn nerves. Mm-hmm. One of the things that they pointed out is that they have a problem with Donald Sterling being stripped of ownership of the Los Angeles Clippers because not as black folks, but as business owners, excuse me, even though I employ these white folks and I give them fair and equitable pay, contingent on their position in this field, because I have my own prejudices, even though it's not seen in a manner in which I conduct my business with them, because you don't like what I said. In America, you get to take my business away from me. That was their position until I explained to them, you're right. It shouldn't be taken away from him based on that premise. But if you have a body of employees that 80% black and they don't want to work for you, and you combine that with the fact that sponsors and advertisers are willing to pull their business from the brand because they don't want an association with you, now you got a different problem, because the NBA is right. You have compromised the brand and what it's been built on, and what former Commissioner David Stern proudly boasted while elevating this brand over 30 years. You can throw that away because of your ignorant comments. See, that's when we understand from a business perspective, Donald Sterling's got to go, which is why the vote needs to be 29-0, okay? Not just, and it needs to be public. There doesn't need to be some secret ballot where people get to support Donald Sterling secretly. Oh, no. If you want to support him, we want to know who you are. We want names, okay? That's point number one. Point number two, and more importantly, like I told the producer that was in my ear, Brian, just a few minutes ago when we were in commercial break, Skip Bayless, if you remember, there was a collective bargaining negotiation going on a couple of years ago. I won't mention the player's name because I'm not going to put him out there like that. He knows who he is. You understand? I'm going to leave it alone. But he was one of the people that was sitting on the other side of the table, and he was highly offended by how David Stern was coming at him. And he was talking about how, well, David Stern is talking to me like I'm some ignorant N-word or something like that. He never, of course, David Stern never used the word, but he was just talking to him, sort of talking down to him like that. And he was highly offended by that. Do you know what I stood up and said to him, Skip? I said, how old are you? The dude wasn't even 30 yet, okay? No college education. I mean, he went to college, but didn't finish it, all right? Because obviously he was going to become a star in the NBA. And I said, you know who that man is? That man was the general counsel of the NBA before he became the commissioner. He was doing this before you were born. He is Michael Jordan compared to you at the negotiating table. It had nothing to do with race. It has to do with the fact that this is what I do for a living, and I've been doing this since you were born, and you, because you play the game of basketball, think that you're qualified to sit across the table from me and engage in a collective bargaining negotiation? See the difference? We got people leaning towards race, when in fact it had nothing to do with race. It has something to do with qualifications. David Stern is a Michael Jordan caliber dude at the negotiating table. You are a basketball player. That's not a reason to be insulted, but you also have to know where you are. So we have to be careful about how we misconstrue or interpret everything. Sometimes it ain't about color. It ain't about race. Sometimes it's about fact, and it's about qualifications, and it's about the realm that you've decided to delve into. We have to be cognizant of that moving forward and not just parse people's words. We have to look at what they say in totality, and we have to understand and comprehend the intent behind it. Sometimes we don't do that, and we can't fault anybody else for that.
All right, let's end it.
It's not right.
Let's end it right there, Stephen A. And end with this June 3rd vote. You guys both say should be public. Mark Cuban has added that he knows how he will vote, but he has yet to comment on it. Should be interesting. LaShawn McCoy was on the show earlier this week, and as mentioned, he said he was the best running back. Adrian Peterson responded, saying he was just joking. We asked you, and clearly you guys think that Adrian Peterson is the best running back. 66% say it is him. Stephen A., LaShawn McCoy versus Adrian Peterson. Did our Twitter followers get it right?
Yes, they did. I love Shady McCoy. He's big time, no doubt about it. I think he's one of the top 3 running backs in the game, if not top 2. But I'm not putting him ahead of Adrian Peterson just yet. I asked him that question the other day, and when he said himself, that's why I immediately came back and said, even Adrian Peterson? Because to me, AP all day is the best in the game still. But Shady's coming, no doubt.
You know, though, Stephen A., when Adrian said yesterday that LaShawn didn't say it with his chest like he meant it, I did think, because I was sitting right here and he was just to my left, you were where you are, and I thought LaShawn did say it with conviction. Maybe not with his chest, because it came across like a humble brag to me. He said it with respect and some humility, but I believe LaShawn believes he is the best running back, and clearly he had the better numbers last year. I'm going to have to lean with you. If you force me to take one in a vacuum, I would take Adrian even at age 29, which is 4 years older than LaShawn is right now at 25. I would still say Adrian Peterson is a little bit better running back in any offense. But I think if you put Adrian in that fast break offense in Philly, I don't think he could do what LaShawn did last year, because LaShawn can catch it a little better. He's a little more elusive, a little more electric in the open field. So I like him better in his fast break offense. And yet, big picture right now, I think LaShawn could catch him, sure, but I think Adrian's still a little bit better as a pure running back.
Well, listen, people are entitled to their beliefs, but just because you believe it doesn't make it so. Even if you're LaShawn McCoy, I'm just saying to you that when I look at Adrian Peterson and I think about what he did with Christian Ponder as his quarterback, I just say to myself, you know what? Could LaShawn McCoy have done that? I'm not so sure. I think LaShawn McCoy is big time. I love his game. Like I said, he's one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the game of football, no doubt. But when you talk about AP, I mean, this dude is big time. He's not as elusive, but he doesn't have to be. What he lacks in elusivity, he makes up for in power and strength and that extra yardage and running between the tackles, all of those different things. And what I saw LaShawn McCoy do, I think that if Adrian Peterson had Nick Foles or Michael Vick with a Deshaun Jackson, with the Riley Coopers, the Jason Avants, the Brent Sellecks, with Jeremy Maclin coming back, I think Adrian Peterson could have done that. I don't know if LaShawn McCoy could have done what he's done with Christian Ponder or Josh Freeman or or whomever it was quarterbacking for the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, so we all think it's AP, but LaShawn McCoy putting him on notice, so to speak, that he's coming.
I think I've said this from the very, very first day I got drafted. I'm here for a reason. I had an opportunity, probably a lot of you guys don't know, I could have gone elsewhere when I was drafted. I had that decision in my hands. I chose not to take it because that's just the way I saw it. Same thing when I went to Nebraska. I wanted to be a part of something that wasn't just already set up or it's on its way of getting better, and I want to be one of the cornerstones of it. So that's what I see myself here in Detroit, being one of the cornerstones that get this organization back to a championship level. And like Coach Caldwell said, we're not in a rebuilding year. We're in a year of going to get a championship, and that's what I want to be here for.
All right, and Dominican Sue returned to the Lions this week for team's first OTAs following their second practice on Wednesday. Sue seems to suggest that he could have gone elsewhere in the 2010 draft. very valuable commodity, perhaps. Stephen A., what do you make of Ndamukong Suh's comments?
Well, what I make of it is that it's a good thing he's trying to say that this is where he wants to be. If he didn't want to be in Detroit, he wouldn't have been in Detroit. And so he's just reminding everybody that he's there by choice. Although he was drafted, I guess what he's indicating is that if he was insistent upon not being a member of the Detroit Lions, then he wouldn't be there, because they would not have drafted him, because they would not have wanted an unhappy individual of his magnitude in their locker room. That's how I took it, based on what I heard anyway. And I think that's incredibly important, because if you're Jim Caldwell, you're the new coach of the Detroit Lions, and you're trying to resurrect this franchise in a sense, not that they fell off the map, but they clearly underachieved last year under Jim Schwartz. One of the important components is making sure that a guy the magnitude of an Ndamukong Suh wants to actually be there. You got to want to be there. And I think that goes a long way with him saying what he said.
I heard it completely differently than you heard it. I heard Ndamukong try to drive home the point as he walked off the podium. You people are lucky to have me here. Remember, he had taken some heat recently for not being at the voluntary off-season workouts with a new coach and Jim Caldwell there. And you and I talked about it, and I said that I believe as the leader or a leader of this team, the leader, I think, of the defense, you just need to be there for Jim Caldwell's sake. Fresh start, just show your face, show everybody you're on board with the new guy. Instead, he took a little heat, and now he's trying to say, being somewhat thin-skinned and defensive, if I may use that word, he's trying to tell everybody, hey, I came today when I was supposed to come, as I always do, and you people are lucky to have me. And this is the intangible I don't like in Suh. I said before that draft I would take him over Sam Bradford, and I stand by that. I thought he should have been the first pick. But could he have forced a trade to go elsewhere, held out? I don't know. I guess so. But he wanted to drive home the point that you're lucky to have me.
Well, in a sense, they are. Because without him, they'd probably be a bunch of softies. They've underachieved. They clearly haven't done the things that they were supposed to do. Some of the things that have contributed to their success is how roughhouse they can get, and you know he spearheads that. Just a feisty, nasty kind of mentality that I believe you sort of need in your locker room and on the field in the NFL, because without that, I don't know what the Detroit Lions would have been. I think that, you know, a lot of times when adversity comes their way, they have folded. So you need somebody feisty like him to remind them of what they're supposed to be and what they need to be. He has to continue to improve, but you still need that.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next six-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The History 300 at Charlotte, Saturday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC.